It was just another ordinary morning in New York City. The sun rose like it always did, casting a soft golden glow over the Soho streets. Children tied their shoes, parents sipped coffee, and 6-year-old Etan Patz, bright-eyed and eager, begged his mum to let him walk to the school bus stop alone for the very first time. Just 2 blocks, 1 turn, a milestone moment every parent fears and every child dreams about. But that moment never ended. Etan never got on the bus. He never made it to school. He never came home. His disappearance would send shockwaves across America, forever changing the way we protect our children. It sparked the milk carton movement, it changed laws, and it haunted his family and the nation for decades. But what really happened to Etan Patz? Who took him? Why has his body never been found? And in July 2025, nearly 46 years later, why is the case still not closed? Let's go back to the day innocence vanished. Etan Patz was born on October 9, 1972, in Manhattan, New York. He was the middle child of Stanley and Julie Patz, a creative, free-spirited couple raising their family in Soho long before the neighborhood became what it is today. Etan had a spark. He was curious, clever, and unusually independent for a 6-year-old. He loved drawing, wore a big smile that matched his even bigger dreams, and was known for the blue corduroy hat he wore almost every day. To his parents and 2 siblings, Etan was the joy of their lives. He was everything. In May of 1979, the Patz family lived in a loft apartment at 113 Prince Street in Soho. Back then, the area was more industrial than residential, quiet, filled with artists and old factories turned into living spaces. It was a time when parents were less fearful, children walked to school, doors were left unlocked. But everything changed on the morning of May 25, 1979, a date now etched into American memory. That morning, 6-year-old Etan begged his mom to let him walk the 2 blocks to his bus stop alone for the very first time. His older siblings had already gone off to school, and he wanted to be like them, just a little more grown up. Julie Patz hesitated, like any mother would. But the stop was just on the corner of West Broadway and Prince Street, visible from their building. She finally agreed, watching him walk down the street, wearing a blue jacket, blue jeans, and his beloved Eastern Airlines pilot cap. He carried his school bag and $1 to buy a soda after class. She watched him go, and then he was gone. Etan never made it to the bus, he never made it to school, and no one ever saw him again. When Etan didn't return home that afternoon, Julie Patz immediately knew something was wrong. She called the school first, but they said he hadn't been there all day. Then she called Stanley, who rushed home from work. By 3:15 p.m., just hours after he left, the Patz family called the police. This wasn't a case of a kid playing hooky. Etan was missing. Police officers flooded Soho, neighbors searched basements, flyers were printed. Etan's photo blanketed the city. His haunting, innocent face, bright smile and wide eyes would become the first of thousands printed on milk cartons in a desperate plea to find missing children. That night, the city didn't sleep, and neither did Julie and Stanley Patz. Before we continue with this heartbreaking and mysterious case, take a moment to support this channel by subscribing. We cover real stories that matter, stories like Etan's that deserve to be remembered. If you believe in justice, truth, and giving victims a voice, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support helps us share stories the world must not forget. In the following days, Etan's disappearance became national news. Hundreds of volunteers joined the NYPD in scouring Soho. Bloodhounds were brought in, the FBI joined the investigation, the local post office suspended operations to let inspectors help. It was one of the largest missing child searches in New York City history, yet no trace of Etan could be found, no body, no clues, no witnesses. Police questioned everyone in the neighborhood, including store owners, delivery workers, and known offenders, but nothing stood out. Etan seemed to have vanished into thin air, on a quiet, sunlit street, just steps from his home. The city held its breath. Days turned into weeks. The Patz family clung to hope. But the longer the silence lasted, the louder the fear grew. By the morning of May 25, 1979, the Patz family's life was quietly humming along in their familiar sixth-floor loft apartment at 113 Prince Street. Etan's morning was like any other. He woke up early, got dressed in his favorite blue jeans, a blue shirt with an elephant on it, his black corduroy jacket, and carried a small, elephant-print tote bag. He wore his black and white sneakers proudly. His mother, Julie Patz, made breakfast and handed Etan $1 so he could buy a soda and a snack at the corner store. But this day was different. For the first time ever, Etan was determined to walk the 2 blocks to his school bus stop, alone. He pleaded with his parents, who had carefully raised him with independence. At first, it didn't seem out of the ordinary. Julie assumed he was at school and would return by 3 p.m. But when the afternoon came and Etan didn't arrive home, a wave of panic surged through her. She began calling neighbors, the school, and then the police. That call, placed just before 4 p.m., sparked what would become one of the largest missing child investigations in American history. Within hours, hundreds of NYPD officers, volunteers, neighbors and friends flooded the streets of Soho. Posters bearing Etan's face were plastered on every lamppost and subway entrance. His wide brown eyes and gentle smile became haunting symbols of every parent's nightmare. The FBI joined the case within 48 hours. Search dogs, helicopters and officers combed every alley, basement and rooftop. Buildings were searched floor by floor. Julie and Stan Patz did everything they could. They handed out thousands of flyers, kept detailed logs of every call, and worked with media outlets to share Etan's story. Their home became a 24-hour operations center, filled with press, law enforcement and neighbors offering support. But days passed, and still, no sign of Etan. Despite intense efforts, there were no reliable witnesses. The bodega owner claimed he never saw Etan that morning. Some children at the bus stop didn't remember him being there. It was as if he had vanished into thin air in broad daylight on a busy New York street. For years, the Patz family refused to move. They kept Etan's bedroom untouched, waiting for the moment their son might walk back in. Etan's case shocked the nation. At the time, America had no Amber Alerts, no milk carton campaigns, no coordinated national effort to find missing children. Etan's disappearance would change all that. He was one of the first missing children to appear on milk cartons across the country, a haunting image during every family's breakfast. President Ronald Reagan designated May 25th, the day Etan disappeared, as National Missing Children's Day. A movement was born out of heartbreak, one that reshaped how missing children were investigated and how families were supported. But even as the national spotlight shone on Etan's story, the case remained unsolved. Before we go deeper into the mystery and heartbreak of this case, I want to take a moment to invite you, if you're moved by these real stories and the families behind them, to hit the subscribe button. We're here to share the truth, to keep victims' names alive, and to honor their stories with the respect they deserve. And if you know a case that needs a voice, drop it in the comments. Let's continue together. In the years following Etan's disappearance, investigators chased every possible lead. One name kept resurfacing: Jose Antonio Ramos, a convicted child molester with a history of luring and abusing boys. Ramos had dated a woman who worked as Etan's babysitter. He admitted to authorities that he had taken a boy who looked like Etan to his apartment around the same time Etan disappeared, but he insisted he had let him go. Still, investigators couldn't place Etan definitively with Ramos. No physical evidence, no confession, and no witnesses. Despite the Patz family's strong belief that Ramos was responsible, he was never charged in connection with the case. In a civil court case in 2004, Stan and Julie Patz won a symbolic judgment against Ramos for Etan's wrongful death, but it was never about money. It was about getting justice. Even then, Ramos refused to confess. For decades, Etan's case remained open. Stan Patz never stopped pushing. He left his job to pursue the case full-time. Julie became a quiet but resilient advocate. Their remaining children grew up with the shadow of their brother's absence hanging over every birthday and holiday. Every year on May 25th, the family held a candlelight vigil in Soho. Stan continued mailing Ramos a photo of Etan every birthday with the words, "What did you do to my little boy?" But answers wouldn't come until decades later. Just when the case seemed frozen in time, a confession from a former bodega clerk sent shockwaves through the Patz family and the nation. But was the truth finally uncovered or buried beneath a false admission? In June 2012, 33 years after Etan disappeared, police arrested Pedro Hernandez, a former clerk at the bodega near Etan's route. Hernandez had worked there in 1979, and his confession claimed he had lured Etan under the pretense of getting a soda, then strangled him in the basement. He said he disposed of the body in a trash bag. The confession stunned investigators, finally a suspect with first-hand knowledge. Hernandez was 51 at the time of arrest, living in Queens, New York, carrying the same weight of an unsolved case he'd been linked to for decades. In his initial confession, he said he was influenced by voices and visions telling him to kill Etan. He described the basement of a house, possibly the Patz home, as the scene. This raised immediate red flags about mental health issues and the possibility of coerced or false confession. Psychologists brought in to evaluate Hernandez found he suffered from schizophrenia spectrum disorders and major depressive episodes. Experts determined he was vulnerable to suggestion and interrogation tactics. His lawyers argued his confession was false, influenced by poor mental health, inaccurate details about the house layout, interrogation pressure. The confession controversy became a major center of the legal battle. Did a brainwashed or mentally ill man claim responsibility for a crime he didn't commit, or was he the abductor? The appeal, 2025, would later hinge on how this confession was introduced and whether it had prejudiced his trial. In 2015, prosecutors presented decline in Hernandez's mental stability as both evidence and weakness. They argued the confession was valid, supported by small details he'd described about Etan's memorial and childhood. They had no physical evidence, no remains, no DNA, but they asserted his own words were strong enough. His defense team attacked the confession's validity, no physical evidence linking him to the disappearance, no photos, maps, or structural records linking his memories, questions about his mental fitness during interrogations. The jury deliberated for nearly 2 days, but in the end, they were hung. The first trial ended without a verdict, reflecting how difficult it was to convict without evidence. Undeterred, New York prosecutors retried the case in 2017. This time, they brought in additional testimony, including doctors confirming Hernandez's familiarity with missing child posters and public locations. Again, no body, no crime scene, no weapon, but the jury found Hernandez guilty of second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. He was sentenced to 25 years to life. Etan's family, Stanley and Julie, expressed mixed emotions, relief that someone was held accountable, but uncertainty remained. His body was still missing. This brings us to July 21 to 22, 2025, the moment the case changed once again. The Second Circuit Appeals Court overturned Hernandez's conviction, citing flawed jury instructions about how to consider his confession and mental competency. 3 key reasons. Mental illness ignored. Jurors were not properly guided on Hernandez's psychological condition and how it affected his self-incriminating statements. Misleading confession context. Inaccurate detail related to the house basement. Some details were wrong, but jurors weren't told this. Coerced admission risk. Interrogators used tactics that could have pushed Hernandez to confess falsely. No physical wounds or evidence supported his confessions. Because of these flaws, the conviction was legally unsound. The court ordered a third trial, or Hernandez must be released if not retried within a reasonable time. Prosecutors are now evaluating whether to pursue it again. Throughout the legal roller coaster, the Patz family remained consistent in one point. They believed the confessed killer was lying. They continued to suspect Jose Ramos, the original suspect, despite no criminal charges from authorities. To them, Hernandez's confession and the lack of a body proved that closure had not truly come. Their fight for justice remained unfinished. Nearly 5 decades later, the truth about Etan Patz still feels just out of reach. With no remains recovered and the conviction overturned, the question still lingers: was justice ever truly served? Following the July 21, 2025 appeals court ruling, the case is once again in limbo. Pedro Hernandez's conviction was vacated. Prosecutors have not yet said whether they'll retry him, and Hernandez remains behind bars, awaiting a decision. The court's written opinion was blunt. The weight of the state's case rested entirely on a confession by a man whose mental illness was not properly considered. The possibility of a false confession taints the integrity of the verdict. So far, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has only said it is reviewing the court's opinion and evaluating all options. But as of today, no date has been set for a retrial and no new evidence has been found. Etan's parents, Stan and Julie, have released no public statement since the ruling. In previous years, they have expressed exhaustion, heartbreak, and a reluctant resignation to the fact that Etan's body may never be found. Even with a conviction on the record, the ghost of Jose Ramos has never fully disappeared from this case. Ramos, who is still alive and living in Pennsylvania, has long denied involvement in Etan's disappearance. But for decades, the Patz family and their attorney have insisted he was the true perpetrator. Ramos was a known pedophile who dated Etan's babysitter. He made disturbing admissions in prison, once telling a cellmate, "I'm 90% sure I was with Etan the day he disappeared." Investigators found photos of boys resembling Etan in his belongings. Despite all this, Ramos was never charged, and prosecutors shifted focus entirely to Pedro Hernandez after the 2012 confession. With that conviction now overturned, some are asking if law enforcement gave up on Ramos too quickly. Still, without physical evidence, there is little to bring Ramos back into the courtroom. To this day, he remains the person the Patz family believes killed their son. Though Etan Patz's remains have never been recovered and no definitive killer identified beyond legal doubt, his case changed America forever. In 1983, May 25, the day of Etan's disappearance, was declared National Missing Children's Day by President Ronald Reagan. His photo was one of the first ever printed on milk cartons, leading to the nationwide practice of publicizing missing children to raise awareness. In many ways, Etan became the face of America's missing children crisis. His case sparked the Missing Children's Assistance Act, 1984, the founding of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, stronger Amber Alert systems and child protection laws. And for his parents, it turned their quiet Soho apartment into the center of a decades-long battle for justice, a battle that may never truly end. Stan and Julie Patz never moved. They still live in the same apartment where Etan grew up, where his room, for many years, remained untouched. Etan was just 6 years old, a little boy with a wide smile, excited to walk to school alone for the very first time. He never made it. In a previous interview, Stan said, "We gave him permission, we let him go, and we've lived with that every single day since." They've spent birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays with a chair forever empty. And now, nearly 50 years later, with no remains and a tossed conviction, they are still asking, where is Etan? The Etan Patz case isn't just a cold case. It's a cautionary tale about justice delayed, confessions questioned, and grief that never truly heals. It is a case that lives in the DNA of American history, even if the truth remains hidden beneath decades of doubt. As of today, no body has been found. No one is serving a final sentence, and yet Etan's name is carved into the heart of every parent who has ever feared the unthinkable. Thank you for watching this story and for keeping Etan's memory alive. These stories matter, not just for justice, but for those who are still searching for answers. If you were the Patz family, would you believe Pedro Hernandez was guilty, or do you think the truth still lies with Jose Ramos? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear more real stories like this, please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone who cares about justice. Until next time, take care of each other, and never forget the ones who are still missing.